after that strange question, and she was left speechless. But then, Joming added, let me love you. On the other hand, it had been 2 weeks since Jaibon had left the house, and he hadn't returned, even once, not even to collect his things. It seemed like Jinjung was missing him. So, that day she decided to visit her estranged husband. But when she arrived, she discovered a colleague shamelessly flirting with him. Of course, this surprised her, but she also noticed how quickly Jaibon distanced himself from the woman. When the woman invited him to drink, he told her that he would never drink alone with a woman, especially if she was married. He suggested she go out with her husband, the man she had chosen to spend her life with. At that moment, he saw his wife and asked if he was mistaken. Soon after they were talking, and she had supposedly come to check on him. This bothered him because he understood she had only come to ask when their divorce proceedings would be finalized, which was scheduled for the following week. What bothered him the most was that she seemed to genuinely want to know how he was, and that irritated him even more. They started to argue, and she remembered a similar situation when he told her to leave him alone just for 5 minutes of peace. But then she shouted at Jaibon, saying that she should have been his priority, not his work. He asked her, so, you cheated on me because of that? He had worked so hard to provide economic stability for both of them. In doing so, he had acted like a fool, but that didn't justify his wife's betrayal. Both had been so stubborn that they never understood each other. Jaibon was tired. He no longer wanted her concern because it disgusted him. On the other hand, that night, Jia was excited. Joming had confessed he was in love with her, and of course with that excitement she hardly slept. The next day she went to work and ran into Jing, who had been waiting for her, just to embrace her later. She thought to herself that he had asked her to wait, but for her the timing still didn't feel right. Sometimes she thought it over. But then Yura started to bother Jia a little, because Jia was distracted, and that cost Yura dearly. The boss became very harsh with her, so severe that it scared everyone. Why? Because now he had a favourite, and that was Jia. Days passed, and John went to his ex-wife's wedding. For him, it was difficult. He just wanted to see how beautiful she looked in her wedding dress and how happy she was. At that moment, she noticed his presence and without hesitation ran after him. Between them, there was a beautiful past, and John just hoped she would find true happiness. Later that night, Jia arrived home, but when she reached her apartment's entrance, she found Hirachell lying there, completely drunk. The worst part was that Joming wasn't home and wasn't answering his phone. Jia tried to make Hirachell remember the code, but seeing how bad he was, she told him to move on. He was surprised, but still lost in his thoughts. He leaned closer to Jia, and just then, Joming arrived. Seeing this, Jia pushed Jian away, and now Jian would pay for this. But Jia tried to explain to Jiamin why she had been so close to him, which excited him. It meant she had given him the green light. Jiamin became excited, because maybe she wanted to be with him as much as he wanted to be with her. And it was true, she had even bought beer to watch a movie with him. It was perfect for him, so he rushed to put Hajun in bed, but upon noticing that Hajun was interested in Jia, Guillaumin thought, please, don't fall for Jia. Afterward, he went directly to Jia's apartment, skipping the beer and the movie. He just wanted to know where her bedroom was. The following days, Jiamin visited the hospital where Hajun worked. Due to the wedding of Seyon, Hajun had been feeling down and had spent all this time with his grandmother, so Jiamin came with roses for him. After asking for him at the information desk, he waited for Hajun to come out. When he did, Hajun was surprised, and Jiamin immediately handed him the roses. Everyone started gossiping, believing the rumors that they were a couple, especially since they began arguing like they were married. Jiamin told Hajun, let's not argue today, please. Then he took him to a beautiful restaurant, one decorated entirely in pink. Once again they made their scene, drawing attention from everyone. Later, Jiamin argued with Hajan in the car until Hajan thanked him. It was really fun today, he said, but it was time to listen to Jia and move on. Ha-jun began talking so much about Jia that Jiamin almost asked him if he liked her, but he didn't dare. Days passed, and when Jia stayed late at work, Jiamin approached her and suddenly asked, "What are we? Do you only care about my body?" Of course he thought they were friends with benefits, but Jian wasn't interested in something like that, especially not with him, someone she had only shared a one-night experience with. Jiamin then put in the headphones and began to tell her about his so-called imperfections, how he had no family, and how he was jealous of his friend. When she took out the earphones, she asked, "Who is she, for you to lose your mind like this?" He begged for a chance, asking her to become his girlfriend. Later that night, Jeon finally went to pick up Sol. His mourning period was over, and as he had said before, now he had to move on. Meanwhile, Jeon finally submitted the divorce petition to his wife. Now they had become strangers to each other. On the other hand, Jin Jung-han, Jaebon's future ex-wife, was talking to her so-called friend or lover. He was interested in her and wanted to know how things were going with her husband. For her, things had already reached a point where they couldn't be fixed. Then, Jaebon arrived to see her, and upon hearing the conversation, he confirmed that there was nothing to fix between them. When he saw the man, Jaebon was consumed by jealousy, because he had even read the messages they exchanged, always telling each other how much they missed each other. But then Jinjeon asked, "What are you doing here? Didn't you say I discussed you?" The truth was, he had come here without thinking. She had only expected to see him at the court, but when she saw him leaving with that man, she couldn't calm herself. She ran to stop her and told her that they were still married, and so he ended up taking her away. However, the supposed lover understood that these two were meant for each other. Meanwhile, Jaebon's mother was having dinner with her husband when she suddenly felt a sharp pain in her stomach. Clearly, she needed to see a doctor, but before that, she would visit her children. In the following days, Jaebon's mother visited him at his office, but she was in for a big surprise when she heard about her son's situation. He was getting a divorce. However, she never found out the reason why. Jaebon only told his friend that he didn't know how to tell his mother. Upon hearing this, his mother was shocked. She walked away and Jaebon called her, but she didn't mention the topic and just hoped to see him soon. Later, she went to the Runway and found her other son, Elle, who was the ogre-like boss of the place, but she was proud of him. Then she noticed his presence, and with so much love she went to greet him. To everyone it was like seeing a mirage, something unreal. After that, she took him to a cafe. He ate a delicious cake, but soon his mother noticed he was in love. He told her it was a bit complicated. Then, from a distance, she noticed him looking lovingly at someone. His mother saw this and thought, "Mingun, your son is a man now." Days passed, and the wait for Jelming made him anxious. So one day, after running into Jia in a private place, he asked for an answer. When would she tell him if she wanted to be his girlfriend or not? She just asked for a little more time because she wasn't sure. He was too much for her, but for him that wasn't the case. To him, it felt like she just wanted to play with him and only cared about his body. But that wasn't the truth. Suddenly he got closer and had the overwhelming urge to kiss her, but of course that wasn't possible in the office. Although Jia wanted an answer, he hoped she would give it to him by tomorrow. And you know what? This was actually a good thing because she would finally have to admit it. From that moment on, the desperation started. He thought, Jia likes me, but she doesn't want to admit it, so maybe he would have to resort to something childish. After making up his mind, he called Yura and asked her to have lunch with him. This surprised both Yura and Jia, but of course he wanted to make her jealous. He took Yura to a restaurant, but as soon as they arrived, he left. Now he could enjoy the meal he was paying for. After a while, he came back with a sandwich for Jia, and of course she was furious. But then he asked her, "I wonder why you're so irritated today, poor Jia." And so he continued all day, trying to talk to some of Jia's friends, who seemed to be flirting. This really bothered Jia a lot. But suddenly she couldn't take it anymore. Jiamin dragged her to the emergency exit because he wanted to know if she was jealous. Jia admitted that she was, and he just wanted her to understand that they needed to stop being friends with benefits and start being a couple. Jia simply said, Okay. Although it was a bit cold, it was a yes, and that made him happy. Now, this handsome editor was her boyfriend. That night, Yeomin met with Haijun and began telling him that he always thought he could give him everything he wanted, but there was one thing he could never give him, and that was Jia, because he was in love with her and they had started dating. Haijun understood and was happy for him. He clarified that yes, Jia was very pretty, but he wasn't in love with her. Days passed, and madness came to the runway. On this day, Yeomin didn't hide his feelings for Jia. He even made sure to confirm that Jia was his favourite. When they asked about his girlfriend, he clearly implied that Jia was his girlfriend. Because of this, Jia tried to distance herself, wanting him to keep things private. She didn't want their relationship to be public, to avoid causing problems. But for him, there was no reason to hide it. He told her that she just had to enjoy it, and he would make sure her days were filled with joy. At this, she didn't object anymore. In the following days, the divorce proceedings for Jinjun and Jaebon took place, but it was very difficult for both of them. He would leave the house, but she thought about giving him the money that was rightfully his after selling it, because she didn't want to live in a place that reminded her of him. Later, Jaebon remembered the first time he saw Jinjun. They had a fierce argument because his car was blocking hers. She tried to stay calm, but he responded rudely, claiming that he didn't need to be so aggressive. He continued insulting her, calling her a brainless fool. Immediately, he realized she was a prosecutor and he was a lawyer, two rival professions. But after a year, he tried to win her over, even proposing marriage, making a bad joke that she was the first prosecutor he liked. It seemed like neither had changed, but why couldn't they stand each other anymore? Later, Jaebon, after drinking, could only go to his mother. He wanted her to cook something for him, and when he was ready to eat, he couldn't. He felt like a failure. Through tears, he confessed to his mother that he and Jinjun had separated. Days passed, and Jae and Jeon's relationship was going perfectly, always living on the edge. But on the other hand, Jaebon's mother had asked to meet with Jinjun. She wanted to know if she had ever bothered her. Maybe she had asked too many questions, like when they would have children. Jinjun clarified that she was happy with her as a mother-in-law, but Jaebon's mother wouldn't stop telling her things she knew very well. How much her son loved her. But then Jinjun cried because, even when Jaebon was close, she felt alone, and she hadn't been the best wife. However, there was no turning back, and all she could do was ask for forgiveness. Days later, Yeomin met with the CEO of the Runway, who cherished him as an honest man who had done impeccable work. She wanted to arrange a date for him with her daughter, Haijun. Of course, Yeomin rejected the idea, since he already had a girlfriend. She asked if it could just be one date, but he firmly refused. He offered to introduce her to a friend if she wanted, but apparently she wanted to make him her son-in-law, hoping he would marry her daughter so she could eventually hand over the Runway to him. But for Yeomin, this didn't make sense. If she considered him for his honesty, then he would be honest. Nothing she said would change his opinion. Over the days, Yeomin and Haijun went to visit Haibon since he was alone and his mother had sent him food. They arrived, and as usual, a fight began. But once they had vented, they started talking. They wanted to know the reason behind his divorce, but he never mentioned what happened. He only said that they had reached a point where they could no longer stand each other. After hours of talking, Yeomin left, and everyone was surprised because he had a date that day. Days passed, and Yeomin remained strict with everyone, determined to make everything perfect. But when it came to Jia, he complimented her, even on her outfit, saying that her boyfriend was lucky to see her every day. This made everyone curious. What boyfriend? But when Yeomin stepped out into the hallway, he bumped into a young woman. She arrogantly apologized, but he quickly realized something was off. His wallet was missing. He called out to her, and she casually pointed to it, speaking with superiority, saying that he must be very used to dealing with pickpockets. She returned it and walked off. Yeomin was curious about who she was, and it turned out she was the famous daughter of a Seo Kelly, Hajun, which confused him. Why would someone like her steal? Meanwhile that night, Jinjun was drinking heavily, reflecting on how she fell in love with Jaebon. He had always been so arrogant that he even asked her to be his girlfriend with a sense of superiority. But now, that didn't matter. She still wondered why it ended this way if she loved him. She called Jaibon drunk and told him that she wanted to have a son and a daughter with him, that she wanted a family. That was why it had been so hard to lose her pregnancy. That night, she died. Jaibon arrived soon after, and she leaned into him, confessing that she had only gone out for drinks with that man. She admitted it wasn't the best behavior, but insisted she hadn't done anything wrong. Soon after, Jaibon took her to his car and decided to drive her home. But seeing how vulnerable she was, he asked if he could kiss her. Just for this once. The next morning she woke up, knowing she had called Jaibon and they had talked about something, but she couldn't remember what. She texted him, saying it wouldn't happen again. He was okay with it, suggesting it was better to keep their distance. That same morning, Jian arrived at work, but Yura informed him that someone was visiting his office, the daughter of Aseo. He entered, furious, and upon seeing her there, all arrogant, he warned her that he didn't like these kinds of games. He made it clear to his mother that he had a girlfriend and wasn't interested in her. But if it was something his mother wanted, he couldn't oppose it. However, for now, she could hate him if she left, and Jia entered, wanting to know what had happened. He simply responded that everything would be fine, and then he kissed her. Days later, Jia's mother visited her, bringing her food. But just as she was about to leave, they ran into Hirachell in the elevator. When she saw that he was her daughter's neighbor, she became excited. He seemed like a good suitor for her daughter, so they quickly began talking. Before parting ways, he gave her his scarf so she could stay warm, which won her over. After they were alone, she asked about him, finding out he was a doctor. With that, she wanted her daughter to give him a chance, and even found it sweet that he had a daughter. But Jia was still hesitant. Her mother wanted to know who she was dating, reminding her not to focus only on looks. At that moment, Jian entered the elevator, and Jia introduced him as her boss. However, Jian quickly started criticizing Jia, only to notice that she was blushing, which made him understand the situation. From that point, he started to get irritated with Jian, and he realized he had made a mistake. Jia wanted to know what her mother thought of her boss, but her mother responded that she didn't like him and thought Jia should date the other guy. She said people like Jian with dark eyes were resentful and stubborn, carrying childhood traumas, and would make her suffer. Jia tried to explain Jian's true nature, but her mother just said goodbye, urging her to give the other guy a chance. The worst part of the situation was that Jian overheard everything. That night, Jian couldn't stop thinking about it. He entered the office where Sol asked him what he was thinking. He replied, "I'm thinking about her." Sol asked him what he saw when he looked into Jia's eyes, and he said her eyes were sad. This surprised Sol, especially when Jian asked her about Jia's father's eyes. Jia had always said her father had beautiful eyes, and Jian realized that his eyes conveyed darkness. That day, Jian went to the park, lost in thought, when Jia found him there. She wanted to know about his past, but understood that he might not be ready to talk. When she was about to leave, Jian stopped her and said, "Wait a little longer. In a year you'll see the difference." Then he started telling her about his past. He grew up without parents, as they died when he was 10 years old. He barely remembered their faces, and neither of his parents had siblings. He was raised by his maternal grandparents, who gave him love, but they passed away as well. Since then, he promised himself he would be successful, as that was the only thing that motivated him. He didn't want anyone to look down on him. So he went to Paris, where he had always loved fashion, clothes, and magazines. He worked day and night to achieve his goals. Eventually, he got an internship at Bog, but over time, he earned his place. He knew he was strict, and that everyone in the office hated him, but it was the only way to get things done properly. He had always been strong. But hearing Jia's mother's words hurt him. Jia tried to calm him, telling him not to take it personally, but he couldn't help it. He believed Hirachell was the best match for her. He had amazing parents who raised him like their own. He told Jia that if she was going to give Hirachell a chance, now was the time. He felt that they should end things before it got too serious, because once their relationship grew stronger, he wouldn't let her go if she tried to end it. Today is fine, he said. Everything will be normal, and what I just said made you smile. She thought he was very confident, but now she had to make herself clear. Jian, I'll be very clear with you, she said. My mum didn't like you because she saw resentment in your eyes. But for me, this is proof of how hard you've worked. These are trophies, and I want you to be proud of them. You, and only you, fought tooth and nail to achieve your dreams. And I love your eyes. It's because of them that I fell in love with you. Stop being insecure, and let's go home and watch a movie together. After that, he stood up and said, I gave you the opportunity, so don't change your mind. And of course, she didn't. On the other hand, Jian was sick at home, not knowing what to do. He felt terrible, and the only person he could ask for help was Jian. He called her, asking if she could help him, as the pharmacy had been closed and he had nothing to feel better. She immediately went to his house. He just wanted the pills and for her to leave, but Jian couldn't leave him alone. She began to take care of him, and after a few hours his fever went down. She was about to leave when he, half asleep, grabbed her and asked her to stay with him just this once because he really needed her. The next day, Haijun was at the cafe on the runway when her mother called. She wanted to know if Haijun had met the boss, Jae-ming. Haijun said yes, but that she didn't like him. Her mother was upset and wanted her to marry him because he was like her. However, Haijun wanted to meet a man whose gaze conveyed sweetness like her father's. Her mother, on the other hand, was arrogant and even despised her father. After hearing this, Haijun hung up the phone, frustrated. Then she saw Haijun enter, and she immediately took an interest in him. She decided to steal his wallet, but it ended up falling, and Jian, who had never experienced anything like this, didn't know how to react, until Jian arrived and told him that the best thing to do was call the police because it wasn't the first time this had happened. Haijun apologized, asked him to leave, and told him not to ruin his life this way. Then Jian told Haijun right to her face that, no matter who she was, he wasn't interested in her. He had a girlfriend, so she should leave the company. But this made Haijun want to stay because she was the heir to everything. She told him that she must act this way because she felt empty inside. She wasn't justifying her actions, but she understood that there were things that money couldn't buy. Haijun then left, introduced herself to Jian, and upon learning his name she felt happy, hoping to see him again soon. The next day, Jia had lunch with her friends and filled them in on her relationship, telling them everything about her boyfriend. To her friends, her boyfriend was so perfect it almost seemed unbelievable. But at that moment, Jian arrived, leaving them in shock, because he was everything and more than what Jia had described. Meanwhile, Jae-bon remembered the day Jin-jun stayed by his side. He had been happy, but since that day, everything had gone back to the way it was before. He recalled how he had been with his wife, forgetting important dates, even demanding that she not waste his time, telling her not to guess but to speak and leave. Do they think there is still hope for them?